Hi guys, my name is Trevor Sullivan and welcome to another CBT Nuggets skill where we are going to be continuing our learning about the GitHub platform. Now, in some of the other skills that I've created on GitHub, we've talked about using GitHub for source control, and we've also taken a look at how to build GitHub Actions workflows that allow you to automate a variety of different activities inside of your GitHub repositories. Now, we are going to be taking a look at how you can integrate Amazon Web Services, the cloud platform, with the GitHub Actions service using a couple of different techniques. Now, the first technique that we are going to be looking at is simply how to embed some static credentials into a repository. And so to do that, what you can actually do is head over to a repository. I'm just going to pull up one called AWS Tests for now, for example. And this repository has a workflow defined inside of it here that runs a series of different tests using a PowerShell testing framework called Pester. And what we can do is, instead of using the OpenID Connect integration here, we can actually statically store credentials directly in the repository as well. And then we can use them as what are known as secrets within a secrets context in your GitHub workflows. So on the repository itself, you want to go over to Settings, and under Settings, we have a Secrets tab right down here. So if we go into Secrets, you can see right now there's no secrets for this repository, but we could add a secret in here, and the secret simply is kind of like an environment variable. So the secret would have a name, so you could call this like AWS key, and give it a value, like whatever the random value is that you could get from AWS Identity and Access Management. And you could also plug in your other credentials there as well. Typically you have a secret key, and sometimes you also might have a temporary session token as well. So you could configure those as secrets or kind of encrypted environment variables on your GitHub workflows, and then reference those inside of a workflow. I'm actually going to switch over to a different repository here to show you an example of that. I've got this repository organization called CBT Trevor, and then within that organization I have the intro GitHub Actions, I believe, and then if I drill under workflows here, actually let me go over to settings first and take a look at secrets right here, and sure enough you can see that I've got several different secrets configured here, and once those secrets have been defined, you can kind of limit the permissions to the repository in terms of who's actually got permission to change or update those secrets, and then you can actually refer to those secrets inside of a GitHub workflow. So if we go over to code here and take a look at the example workflows that I've got here, I think I've got one called Migrate S3 here, and sure enough you can see that inside of this workflow right here we are actually referencing these secrets by using this special context known as the secrets context. And this is just kind of the syntax that you would use in order to reference secrets. There's actually several other what are known as GitHub contexts available besides secrets, but anytime that you're referencing a context in GitHub, you would use the $, double open curly braces, and then you do secrets or whatever context name you're referring to, dot property name. So the secret that we want to refer to would go on the right-hand side of the period, and then we would close that off with a couple of closing curly braces. So the syntax looks a little bit cryptic, but you can kind of think of this like a templating engine where when GitHub is actually going to invoke or execute this particular workflow, the GitHub platform will actually take the secrets that are configured on the repository, if they exist, and then substitute those in for these placeholders right here. So effectively, we would be kind of manually configuring this configuration file and kind of make it easy to create a separate workflow from the actual secrets that we are defining. So we could actually take this workflow and then put it into a completely separate repository and then configure a different set of secrets on that other repository, and this workflow would continue to work as long as we name the secrets the exact same thing. Now, the static credentials method is certainly one way to configure integration between GitHub Actions and Amazon Web Services. You basically go into AWS console, you generate some static credentials on an IAM user account, but the there's another way to do this as well. And so if you don't want to configure these static credentials and you have to worry about manually rotating those credentials, so maybe every 60 or 90 days, you go into AWS Identity and Access Management, you generate a new set of credentials, and then you have to come back here into the repository and manually update those secrets right here on the Secrets tab. That can be a lot of work, especially if you have multiple repositories and maybe you've got lots of different services that you have to log into. Like I might have to log into AWS, I might have to log into Firebase, I might have to log into other cloud services out there and generate credentials for those services as well, so we can bring all those credentials together, and that can take a lot of time. So what we can do instead with AWS is actually do something called configuring OpenID Connect. And this is a special type of integration that allows you to control the access that a particular GitHub repository has to your AWS IAM credentials and the permissions inside of your AWS account. So you can get really granular with it. And the nice thing about setting up this integration is that once you set up this integration, you don't have to worry about generating any kind of temporary credentials, because your GitHub actions will automatically go out to AWS and it will request temporary tokens based on this trust relationship that you set up between GitHub and Amazon Web Services. So we're going to be taking a look at how to kind of set up static credentials, as well as how to set up this OpenID Connect workflow in your AWS account as well, so that you can kind of pick and choose which approach you want to do for credential management in your GitHub Actions workflows. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.